Hello everyone, I cordially welcome you all to another video from the React tutorial series, and in this video we are going to discuss uncontrolled and uncontrolled components in React. So without any delay, let's get started. So first of all, we will learn about uncontrolled components. This is very similar to the general HTML inputs that we are familiar with. These components are not controlled by the React state but are handled directly by the DOM. So to access any data here, we need to take help of refs. So if we are not familiar what are refs, so the ref is used to return a reference to the element. UseRef is a React hook that lets you reference a value that's not needed for rendering. It takes an initial value as an argument and is mutable. It contains the current object which is set to the initial value. Later we can set it to something else. In class components, we use refs using the create ref, and in functional components we use the same thing using the useRef hook. So uncontrolled components are like HTML inputs that we are already familiar. We can use this concept of uncontrolled components using ref. In class component we can use ref using the create ref method, and in functional components we can use useRef using the useRef hook. And one thing which you must remember, that is the useRef hook takes an initial argument, that is where the useRef hook is basically set. Later we can set it to something else. The useRef hook returns an object which contains the current. Now this current is basically contains where it has been set. Okay. Thus remember one thing, useRef hook returns a current object which is mutable, and unlike useState, modifying the value pointed by useRef hook does not cause re-render. Okay. Now let us understand by an example. As you can see on my screen, we have an uncontrolled component here. Now we have initialized a reference variable named as input element ref using the useRef hook, and initially we pass null as an argument. And here we have a function handle submit. It basically, when triggered, shows the value where the input element f refers. Okay. Here we have a form known as a profile form, and within this profile form we have a name, and we have given an input type text to get that name, and the input element ref refers to this input element only, and we have a button known as submit. So when we click on the submit, this handle submit will be triggered, and we will be able to see the input element ref.current.value, that is input element ref points to this DOM input element, and as I have already said, this input element ref returns an current object. So within that current object, a value will be present, which will be the value that has been typed in this input element, and that will be alerted on the browser. Now we have imported this component in the app.tsx and we have used it here. So without any delay, let's run our application and see if it's working. So npm start. This will start our React application, and let's wait for some time. So as you can see, we can see a profile form with a name and a submit button. So if I write John Doe and I click on submit, you see on the browser it alerts the user saying user's name is John Doe. Okay. So how is that possible? So remember, in the uncontrolled component, this input type text is referred by this input element ref, and we can access the value here using this thing, input element ref dot current dot value. Okay. So not only you can print the value on the console or on the alert section, but you can also use this to highlight some DOM node. So you can write dot focus to focus the element when the component loads. Okay. So this is all about uncontrolled components. So let's go back to the slide and learn about controlled components. Now we come to the second part of today's video, that is the controlled components. In React, controlled components are those in which the data is handled by the component state and not directly by the DOM using refs. Using props, the component initializes its current state. By using event handlers, it updates the states and renders the DOM. Props are basically the data and methods which are sent by the parent component to the child component. It is a way of communication between components. State here means the local state of a component. So unlike the uncontrolled components, we don't need any reference to DOM nodes or any reference to the input elements as you say. Here the data which will be displayed is controlled by React, okay? And in the next example, we are going to see how that happens. So again, let's go back to our code and learn about control components and how we can implement the same. So now, as you can see on my screen, we are on this control component. So here within this control component, we have set up a local state variable username and a method to update the local state variable using this useStateHook. So as I have already said many times, this useStateHook returns us two things. It basically returns us a variable where the value is stored and the method to update the state variable. And initially it takes an argument where we have passed a single pair of quotes. Now here also we have handle submit. When this method will be triggered, it will show the username on the browser. Similarly, we have here profile form handle submit. We will take the username from this input element, and when we will click on submit, the name will show up. Now unlike the previous example, if you compare, here we use ref and put up a reference variable which refers to this input node. But here in control components, in value, we set it to username, that is the local state variable. And here we have an onChange method which when triggered updates the local state variable by what we type on the input type text. Okay. Now again, without any delay, let's run the code and see if it's working. But before we run our code, we need to import in app.tsx and then use it. So here as you can see, we have already imported it in the app.tsx. Now we will just replace this uncontrolled component by the control components, okay? And then we will run our application. So let's wait for some time until the browser starts. So yes, our app is loading. So as you can see, we same have a profile form. Here I will again write John Doe, and if things work perfectly, here it should show an alert message with the name. See, it's working. It is showing user's name is John Doe, exactly like the previous example, okay? So I hope the concept and implementation of controlled and uncontrolled components is clear with you. Now, in the last part, we will just differentiate how controlled components and uncontrolled components are different. So let's go back to our slide. As you can see, now we are going to discuss on the differences between uncontrolled components and controlled components. So the first point, components are controlled by DOM directly. And in case of controlled components, components are controlled by component state. This we have already seen in the example. In case of uncontrolled components, we can control by DOM using the refs in React. But in case of controlled components, we can use the useStateHook to return the state variable, and then we can set it to the input element where the data is shown. Secondly, uncontrolled components maintains internal state, but in case of controlled components, internal state is not maintained. The third point is current value is accessed using a ref. In case of controlled components, current value is received via props. Now this thing we have to remember, in case of that useRef hook, we set up an initial value which we pass to the useRef hook. Okay, and on the code, we basically makes it to refer to the input type text. In case of control components, we don't have any method. Though in useStateHook, we have set up a single pair of quotes as the initial value, but in case of a production grade application, majority of the times you will find that this sort of components will take in some data as props, and then it will set that data within the useStateHook to set up the initial state of the component. Okay. The last but not the least is uncontrolled components doesn't allow validation control, but control components allow validation control. Okay. So this is for now. I hope you like this video. In case you like it, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We are going to bring up more videos in the future. For any queries, doubts, suggestions or feedbacks, feel free to post them in the comment section. We are going to reply. So thank you for now. See you in the next video. Bye.